I'm Troy Stetina here in the studio today with the Lampifier Infinite Direct Box. This is a pretty cool little item, and there's really nothing out there quite like it. It's like a direct box. It has all of the standard ins and outs of a direct box, but in addition it's got all this stuff. Tone shaping, dynamic control. So it's really like an inline preamp, and you can plug bass guitar, acoustic instruments, piezo mic, microphones, condenser mics, any different kind of signal basically into this, and then out for live PA, but also out USB out going into your computer. So basically it'll connect anything to anything, and it'll help shape and control your tone. So very versatile, can be used for a lot of different purposes. I'll just give you a quick overview here. Let's take a look at it a little closer. Here are the controls here on the front. We're going to go through these, and then I'll explain what's going on inputs, input options, and then also outputs. But first, let's take a look at what's on the face of this, because there's a lot of controls here packed into a very small space. So there are 4 sections. This section is the input section. Then here we have the tone control section. Here we have the Lampifier, which is a dynamics processor, dynamic control. And then we have speaker simulator and output in the final section. The first thing we have is the input switch, which allows us to lift the ground here or leave the ground. If we don't have any ground problems, you just leave it in the middle section. On the left switch, we have the ability to engage 48-volt phantom power. So what that does is any mic that's plugged into the XLR gets phantom power. So if your mic is a condenser mic or whatnot, you'll be able to pass phantom power onto the mic. So there's that section. Then the next part here is input level in the pad button. With the pad at 0, that's what you'd use for the lowest level signals coming into this, which would be things like instrument level, bass guitar, electric guitar, pickups and so forth. They're going to be coming in at quite low levels, and so pad at 0, and then you get to control your input level here. If it's too hot, you'll get a peak indicator will come on, and the peak LED will glow and will let you know that you need to back it off. If your signal is extremely hot and you backed it all the way off to there and it's still too hot, then hit the pad switch over. Now you got minus 15 dB, and you can fine tune it here. And if it's an extremely hot signal, you can do all the way down to minus 30. So this will cover a huge range of input levels. And now we have the next switch here in the input section. This allows you to turn the thing off. That's the mute button, which is off. And the other 2 settings, turn it on, and you'll see the power light comes on. And then they control the signal routing. This arrow shows you that in this setting, the signal goes directly into the tone controls, and then from there directly into the output, the speaker simulator and output. If you go left on this switch, you'll see now you're going into the dynamic control. And the dynamic controls then go into the tone controls and into the speaker simulator. So this basically allows you to bypass the dynamic control if you don't want to engage that. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about it. Put it to the far left. Signal passes into the Lampifier patented circuit, which is dynamic control. It's like compression, except it doesn't work the way a standard compressor works. And now, this is a little bit beyond the scope, but suffice it to say that it reduces dynamics intelligently without crushing them, so that you can still experience the dynamics that you are inputting into your instrument or into your microphone, but just within a more usable range. So how much this signal processing is engaged is controlled by this level. So you basically will get more compression, you'll get a tighter dynamic up here in this area, and you'll have less down here. And then this will set your output level. But if this does change your apparent volume significantly, then you can adjust to make up for it. Each of these has a peak next to it to let you know if you're driving it too hot and it's peaking on input into the Lampifier section, or peaking on output coming out. So At each stage along the way, you have a peak indicator to make sure that you're not introducing distortion. Coming out of this, now you're sending it into the tone circuitry. And what we have here is 5-band, high-quality series tone controls. Each band is plus or minus 15 dB, and that's a real 15 dB. What we have is shelving on the top and the bottom. There's a bass shelf and a treble shelf. Frequency-wise, you're at 12K is the frequency that's actually getting the indicated, plus or minus. So if I had plus 15 dB up here, that means plus 15 dB at 12K. And then, of course, as the frequency drops, the amount of boost drops lower and lower until eventually it reaches 0. And then the same thing in reverse down here on the bass. If you had a plus 10 at 50, you might have plus 5 or maybe 4 at 100, and then cut that in half, or a little more than half again at the next level. So shelves on the end. Now here we got mid-range in the middle, which is sweepable from 400 Hertz all the way up to 1.6K. And then presence knob is upper mids in a kind of a wide Q. And then we also have this down here. This is upper bass that runs from about 98 Hertz up to about 300. And it's a somewhat narrower Q than these others. But the purpose of this, and the reason that you have the note names given, G, G sharp, A, B, C, D, etc., all the way up past G, up to B again. So an octave and a third. The reason that this is done this way is because a lot of instruments, and especially acoustic instruments, but even electric instruments as well, tend to have resonant frequencies in the low end. And so in a lot of cases, if you are plugging bass guitar or let's say acoustic guitar, and you want some nice low end, and you turn up the bass shelf, which grabs all those low end frequencies and pushes them up, in many cases you're going to have too much at a particular frequency. You're going to have a resonant frequency that swells too much. And so the idea here is then you can find that frequency and notch it out. You don't have to sacrifice your low end just because you have an unpleasant bump in one spot. So that's the common way to use this. It could be used in the other direction as well. You could boost and find a frequency that sounds good if that works. But anyway, you've got 5-band high quality EQ. Now let's talk about the last section, speaker simulator. Here we have a phase control, so you can switch the phase around or leave it in place as needed. And the other thing you can do, of course, is you can bypass the speaker simulator and just do direct out if you don't want speaker simulator to affect the tone. If you do want speaker simulator, then you've got a 412 cabinet on stack in the middle setting, and then you have an open back cabinet for setting on the left. And of course, here is your final output volume. So let's talk now about the ins and outs here. You see really how flexible this thing really is. There are basically what I would call 3 different categories of types of inputs. So bass guitar, electric guitar, keyboard or line level signal comes in here, and it's mono, 1/4 inch. If you want to also tap that signal and send it elsewhere, you could set this switch to through, and now the signal that comes in here is output here, and you can take it somewhere else, let's say onto an amplifier or whatever. That would be useful if you're playing electric guitar and you want to tap your clean tone, and let's say record your clean tone while you also play live and hear your amp. And that might be useful sometimes. Sometimes people like to record clean and dirty at the same time, and then with the clean sound you can run Amp Farm or Guitar Rig or any of these softwares later to get different kinds of tones. So this allows you to do that and hear your amp at the same time. That's one use of that through button. Another, of course, would just be if you wanted, for any other reason, to split any signal. You could do that. Here's another use in the same vein. Here we're talking about set to mix. Now, instead of an output, these are both inputs, and so you could take stereo input, let's say from a keyboard, and mix it into mono. And that's something you'd want to do if you're playing keys and you're playing live and you want that to mix down into mono to give to, you know, live PA in mono, which is typically what you'd want to do. There's a second category. This is XLR. So we're talking about microphones, any kind of mic, dynamic, condenser, or whatever. Any kind of microphone can plug in here. Now, condenser mics and some other type of mics are phantom powered, which means that they need 48 volt phantom power in order to run. And if this is set to 48 volt, this will pass phantom power to a microphone of that type, provided that this is powered properly to do that. So there are basically 4 ways to power this box. There's a battery, there is an adapter, 9 volt adapter, and there's a USB. If you plug into a computer, it'll be powered through the USB port. And then if you plug this into a mixing board, into the DI out, and the mixing board channel has phantom power enabled, it'll pass phantom power into the box. So there's 4 different ways to power this box. However, 2 of those ways do not provide enough power for the box to also power a condenser mic. And they are, if this box is powered by phantom power itself, it cannot also pass phantom power onto a mic. And if it's powered from a battery, it's not going to have enough power to power a itself plus phantom power. The other 2, it will. So if you plug a computer in, it'll automatically have power and be able to power phantom power. Or if you plug in a 9 volt adapter, then you can do that. So provided those conditions are met, and this switch is here, you'll be able to power phantom powered mics. And it also has a tip ring sleeve here. So tip ring sleeve allows piezo mics to be input here. Now piezo mics typically have higher impedance and so are lower signal level than other mics. And when you do plug in a piezo mic here, this switch becomes a different function than it was where it was mixing through when it was dealing with these. When you're plugged in over here, this becomes a boost. So in the down position, it's 0, which is where you'd want it for plugging in microphones typically. And if you plug in a piezo mic and you need the boost, switch it up, it's plus 15 dB, and it shoots that piezo mic input level up nice and hot. So there's your inputs. That's the second category of inputs. Third category of inputs is load box. You can tap the speaker out of a guitar amp with this thing. So what I mean is, take the speaker cord, powered signal out of your amp that's going to your speaker, send the speaker cord here, set it to through. Now it can come out here and continue onto the speaker. So it's going to it doesn't interrupt anything. The signal flow will still happen and you'll listen to your speaker. However, when this is inserted in that chain like this, now you can take that signal, engage the speaker simulator, and output direct or even to computer to record without miking the amp. And there's some nice advantages to doing that because now you don't have the coloration of the mic and you also have 100% isolation. So you don't have any off-axis noise, you don't hear the drum in the background of the guitar mic and make it that much harder to mix. So engineers love that, of course. The better isolation, the more control they have and the better mix they can get. So this allows you to do that as a load box. Lampifier's got a big sheet in here of, you know, basically all the different kinds of things that you can do with it, you know, give you some ideas of exactly how you go about setting up to do each of those things. Now let's talk about the outputs. Basically we've got line out, and that's adjustable based on your volume level. You've also got USB out, so that's going to come in, plug into any computer, and you've got direct out, which is going to plug directly XLR into a mixer. which is what you'd be using for live PA, or frankly recording in a studio or something. So bottom line is you have the ability to record or play live and listen, you know, any different output levels that you want, and on the input, any input levels. So this thing is just extremely versatile, and it sounds great on bass guitar and acoustic instruments, whether we're talking about, you know, acoustic guitar or mandolin, banjo, violin, and whether you've mic'd those instruments or whether you just use a piezo mic or even an acoustic guitar, standard acoustic guitar pickup, this will handle all that. It's a high quality, nice professional sound that is smooth. The way that intelligent Lampifier dynamic type of compression works, it's smooth and yet you have dynamic, so it's a joy to play through. And then bottom line, of course, microphones. You can run any mic through the Lampifier patented dynamic control circuitry, and now instead of just finding that quality in you know, in the Lampifier mics, you know, now you can use whatever other mic you might prefer and also get the benefits of the Lampifier circuit. Lampifier offers a 30-day money-back trial period, so if you're not convinced, you think this sounds like a cool thing, but you're not convinced because, of course, you haven't got it in your hands and actually played it yet and hear what it sounds like, you can get one of these, try it out, and if you don't love it, you can send it back and get a refund.